Welcome to the Spiritually Inspired Podcast. My name is Jayson. I'm a spiritual teacher, yoga artist, and author. The purpose of this podcast is to be the match, igniting your spiritual fire. Enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, this is Ty, the Spirit Messenger, creator of the Messengers of Spirit Online Spiritual Academy, and I am a spirit-guided coach. Jayson is your creator of the Spiritually Inspired Podcast, and today we're going to reverse roles a little bit. He and I have agreed for me to interview him. So I'm so interested to find out more about you, Jayson. The description I have for us to look at is that you are a yoga artist and a two-time author. Your books are titled Ancient Wisdom for Modern Enlightenment and No Mud No Lotus. So if you're listening today and you're new to Jayson's audience, we want to invite you and thank you for joining this podcast. And you're going to be learning lots more about your humble host for the Spiritually Inspired Podcast. Thank you.
So thanks for agreeing to do this with me. That's fun. It's nice to sit back and just listen to the intro for once.
I think it takes a very brave soul to kind of reverse roles, reverse positions, because when we host our own podcast, it's very easy to put the spotlight on somebody else, or maybe pick their brain, or see, what their attitude of gratitude is all about. And I'm excited to shine the spotlight on you for a little bit.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited. This is going to be fun, a different thing. And this really serves as an example for people in conscious communities that collaborating is really a beautiful thing. And as you said, artists, you can really create some beautiful artwork and create something beautiful when you collaborate with other people in your spiritual or conscious community.
Totally agree, and I couldn't agree more. I don't know if you study numerology, but this year's 2018, the vibration is a very spiritual number. It's a master number 11, which also becomes 2. 11 is all about spiritual illumination, and the theme for this year is teamwork makes the dream work. So I'm not surprised that you'll probably be doing a lot more collaborations for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's exciting. I may even have to interview you about numerology. I'd love to learn more.
Numbers, I use them for everything. Book titles, so we might want to get together for that. Even Facebook groups and who your business partner is and what your business name is. It's a big deal what vibration each one of those letters carry.
So you're talking about the numbers associated with the letters? Yeah.
It's a big deal. All right, let's talk about you. Let's talk about the magic you've got going on. Tell me what a yoga artist is. What does that mean to you?
A yoga artist. The first time I heard that, I actually did an interview on this podcast with my friend Andrew Seeley. And he lives in LA, and he's just he's like really well known on social media, but I could just tell in his voice and in him that he was so humble and so real. And he said some beautiful stuff. Like at first I was having a problem putting myself out there as much on social media before. And he said, well, don't even worry about that. When you see an ego in somebody who's doing yoga on social media, it's a representation of the a representation of the person and not the practice. Sometimes maybe it was even a representation of me. But back to the yoga artist is, for me, when I'm doing yoga, every single movement and every single breath is this devotional act towards the divine. And we were talking about it before as we really connected. And I think when we are being present in the moment, connecting with the divine and being in this world and not of it, we're creating some beautiful artwork. And so for me, yes, it's a physical practice, a spiritual practice, but it's really like the imprint or the artwork of my soul is what I see as yoga.
Oh, I love that. And honestly, let me dig at the artist thing for a little bit. I know a lot of people that are instructors for yoga or they practice yoga, but you use the term artist. Is that because of, do you take take it to like a next level?
Well, I've always been very, very physical. Like I was a professional mixed martial artist for several years. So I've always been a very physical, intense person. But really the idea about like creating art, like when an incredible artist like Beethoven would play the piano, or Picasso would paint a painting. I bet they went into something like a trance-like state, or even more than that, it became a meditation for them. So I think anything that gets you in that meditative state, and you're in that place where you're really connecting with Source, then you're creating Source in the world. And to me, that's what artwork is it's just like a beautiful, clear representation or manifestation of the divine. So for me, doing yoga is just, it's the song of my soul. I love yoga, and it puts me in that place. And that's why I love teaching yoga, because just to get to share that with other people.
Right. I deeply resonate with that, and I love that you are, in this broadcast, you're talking about this not only being like a spiritual practice and a physical practice, and kind of bringing all that together. I live in the state of Florida, and there are a lot of studios here I'm grateful for that offer yoga, but nothing that I have seen yet compares to the posts that I've seen you doing on social media on like the handstands and the legs folding over in there. Like, it's really like a sight to behold. I've been paying a lot of attention to your posts lately, and I can tell you that the area that I'm in Florida right now is very much a retirement community, and their process and style is very different than what you are offering. And it gives me I'm not actually one that practices yoga, so it really gives me this reflection that even under the like surname of yoga is all of this different styles, breaths of the creator, of the divine, showing up in all kind of different ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of different styles of yoga. Somebody told me is that there's 8 billion different ways to meditate, or 8 different styles of yoga. I think that was you who said that, right?
I said that, yeah.
So and I truly believe that as well. There's a story where Lord Shiva, the god of yoga, when he first came to this planet, when he was born here, I think there were 82 million yoga postures or something like that, and he taught his next student under him 12 million yoga poses. So the level or the intensity of the pose is not the most important thing. I think it's the state that you get in, and I'm really blessed to have started with what's called Ashtanga yoga, and it's a style that was developed by Pattabhi Jois. It's a very traditional style, and I started at home practicing, and actually from privates too, like one-on-one with a teacher for a couple years, until I met my guru, my teacher, Tim Miller. And Tim was the first American ever certified to teach Ashtanga yoga. So anything that I have, it's because of what he taught me or the people that he taught. So really, anything I can do, it wouldn't be without him. So I'm very grateful. And it's funny, but right behind me is actually all these pictures I have of Tim. I'll show you after the... I'll show you after the that's funny, but they're there. But the stuff that I can do is because of him and my other teacher, Natasha, Holly, Atsuro, and really the amazing Ashtanga yoga community in Encinitas. And the practice is great, but really the most important thing for me to keep yoga a meditative practice, there's 3 really important things. One is like your bandhas, or you could call it your posture. So really holding your core and maintaining good posture. And then we always have a dristi, or a focus point, and then it's our breath. So when we are doing those 3 things all at once, our mind is literally like juggling those 3 aspects: the breath, the posture, and the gaze. Doing those 3 things, you can't help but just be totally in that zone. And for me, it's what yoga is. For my mom, she likes to do knitting. For other people, other things help put them in that zone. And that's much more important than any beautiful physical posture. So for a long time, I was afraid to post that kind of stuff because I was afraid it was going to make me feel or seem egotistical. Really, what it was more than egotistical. It was that the yoga practice is sacred for me. So it would be like, the way that I would feel would be like taking a camera into church and like having a picture of me praying in church, and then sharing that with everyone. That's the way that I see yoga. Most other people they may not see it the same way that I do, but I felt like this is something that is very sacred, and it's just between me and Source, So, but eventually I started sharing more because it inspires people, and if I'm sharing love, then that's all it's going to create is love. If I come from anywhere else, that's what it's going to create. So
great. I love that. And I'll try to keep that in mind next time I scroll past your posts on the feed in front of me. I'll be like, okay, so Jayson's praying. It might be hard to do looking at your legs and arms like a pretzel, which my hat goes off to you. You are so darn flexible. It's amazing. And I like it. I understand that you don't serve from ego, but I think it's just such a wonderful demonstration of what this art, this process of yoga, the style of it, how it works for you, and that the needle on it, the expanse of it, can be so, it can go so far left or right. And I'm really grateful that you've educated not only me but the rest of your audience in those 3 points that are necessary to kind of stay in that state of divine connection and bliss. So thank you for kind of teaching all of us. How did yoga come into your life?
What a story. The full story, the unabridged version, is on I think it's the second podcast that we did.
Okay.
But the shorter version is, I was on house arrest. I think I was like 19 years old. And it was just really tough. I just got back from this horrible boarding school in Mexico. It was just a horrible, horrible experience. I went away to school and I got in trouble at college, like literally on purpose, just to kind of spite my parents for sending me to this school. And I came home and I had to go on house arrest for a few months. It was right before my 20th birthday. And it's actually in the room that I'm in right now. I walked right outside that door. And I was so angry on my birthday about something I can't even remember what. I punched the wall on the side of the house, and it was wooden. But I didn't know at the time that behind the wood was concrete. And so I looked down at my hand, and my knuckle was popping out the bottom of my wrist. So I had to call the house arrest people, the ankle monitor people, and tell them that I'd be leaving the house to go to the hospital and get surgery. And I came back, and again, this was my 20th birthday. And later that night I was watching a movie, and it was like a martial arts movie. Like I was just so angry at that point in my life. All I wanted to do was martial arts. So I saw this jiu-jitsu movie with Rickson Gracie. It's called Choke. And halfway through the movie it shows him doing yoga on the beach. And then I thought that was interesting. Then it shows him doing a pranayama, or a deep breathing practice. And I could tell in him there was something different. There was this spark of awakened consciousness in his eyes, just from the depth of his practice, was incredible. And the intensity just at how he lived. And it blew me away. And later that day, my mom's friend had just got back from an intense teacher training with this amazing teacher, Tim Miller. And my mom said, if you're interested in yoga, maybe we could try some deep breathing. And if you like it, we'll have my friend come and give you private lessons. So this night I'm like probably more stressed out than I've ever been in my entire life. I was so angry. I just punched the wall, broke my hand. I'm on house arrest. It's my birthday. It's absolutely horrible. We sit down and we do some deep breathing. And I tuned into this place in me. I didn't know where it was that I was coming back from when we stopped. And totally I tuned into the parasympathetic nervous system, the place of deep relaxation. But it was much deeper than that. And 12 years later, I continue practicing and going deeper in my spiritual practice from that. And so I literally started learning Ashtanga yoga from private lessons in this room I'm sitting here now. But yeah, with an ankle monitor on. I remember balancing with one leg up in the air, with an ankle monitor on one leg, like a 2-pound monitor. And it really helped me find my purpose and get in better alignment and find some guidance in my life. And I still did martial arts and was extremely successful at martial arts. But eventually I I chose the spiritual path, and I just that's where I'm at now. That's going deeper in my practice today.
That's amazing. And I've heard that yoga is transformational. I've heard that from a lot of people. So I'm guessing you would probably agree that yoga and the practice can be very transformational.
Yeah, I don't think when I have students that come and they get really into it, my students call it that they drank the Kool-Aid, But when I have students who really get into it, I haven't met a single person who didn't really dive into yoga in a deep, consistent practice of yoga for a couple of years that it didn't totally transform or change their entire life. I know a lot of people that needed surgery 2 months before they started yoga, and the doctor's like, I don't know what you did, but you don't need surgery anymore. Just keep doing whatever you're doing. And that's the surface level, I know other people who've healed themselves from cancer with yoga, or one of my students said, I came to yoga because I hurt my ankle and I ended up healing my soul. And it was so beautiful. So for me, yoga, I talk to my friends I grew up with that have known me since I was young and crazy, you could say. But we all agreed that I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for yoga anymore. So totally transformative for me. And the process, it doesn't get to a stopping point. And I think where most people think of as enlightenment, maybe that's just the bottom floor of heaven on earth. Maybe that's just you're getting your black belt, but there's, in martial arts, you have stripes on a black belt.
Right.
So I think the traditional old thought of enlightenment and awakened consciousness, that's just the bottom floor. So
that's amazing. Are you and your mom, since she was the one that introduced this kind of practice, or was the connection for you, are you able to share time and space with her where you're able to do yoga together?
Yoga together. My mom, my practice is so crazy. My mom probably wouldn't want to do Ashtanga yoga with me, but you know what? Thinking about that, I said I just went to this full moon ceremony a few weeks ago in Hakamba at this desert tower. It's like a 100-year-old desert tower in the middle of the desert on a mountain overlooking the entire desert. It's an energy vortex, amazing. And the woman who lives there is a Kundalini master from Germany, but she was in Bali for many years. And we've done a lot of Kundalini together. So my mom likes Kundalini a lot. So we've gone out there and done some Kundalini. Yeah, my mom's not up for so much Ashtanga yoga, but she has been to some of my classes before. So
nice. That would be amazing to see the two of you share space together. Just saying, if you were gonna post something on social media, that might be cool.
Okay.
I'm now one of your fans and followers.
My dad is not very tech savvy, so we'd have to set him up how to use his cell phone or a camera. He's one of the only people I know on the planet he has a cell phone, but it's still in the box. So, maybe I'll have to get a picture of my mom and I doing some yoga therapy together.
It'd be amazing, and it'd be, I think, just a really full circle moment in the fact that you're even staying back there this week while we're having this conversation. And didn't you just have your second book come out?
No, it hasn't come out yet. Tell me
what's going on.
Well, I'm actually in the process of working with a couple different publishers and agents and a publicist right now. So I can't say too much about the potential deals that are on the table, but
awesome.
Very soon. I actually have a meeting with my publicist as soon as we get off to talk about this next book. But the next book is a new concept that I've been working with a lot, and I really love this idea that suffering is a blessing. So it's interesting, but I've been through some crazy changes in the past 4 months and have literally moved 4 times in the past 4 months. And every time you move, you know how you kind of lose stuff or lighten the load a little bit just because it's a move. Yeah, and you would know because it sounds like you travel, you move a lot. Yeah.
I totally have adopted the whole minimalist mindset, lifestyle, practice. I couldn't be happier.
And so for me, the less stuff I have, the easier it becomes to move freely, even just in my regular day. so it's interesting. And as all these things have been happening and these changes have been happening, there's been a lot of suffering and like things that I've gone through that have been very difficult. We were just saying that before is, wow, now that I'm on the spiritual path, things are not necessarily going to get easy. You know, people who are on the spiritual path are still going to have trouble and obstacles in their lives. Even if you're still doing your daily practice, you can rest assured you will. So the important thing is to keep looking for God in that moment. Like the other day I was like, man, God, where are you? Like, I don't feel that we're as close as we were a week or two ago. What's going on? And I realized that it was the consistency and the depth of my own spiritual practice that was wavering. And God was all there waiting all along. It was just for me to come back. So I truly believe that like these moments of suffering are teaching me how to stay connected all the time and not disconnect. Yes. And that's what's much more important. So this whole new book it's introducing 10 tools or 10 steps from all different religious and spiritual practices and ways to overcome suffering or transform suffering into a blessing.
I love it. I'm so excited about this. And, you know, what an inspiration you are and probably have been to others, you know, throughout your entire lifetime. And I completely agree. I think that when we are called upon to be demonstrations of that, so for you, it's the practice of, you know, seeing the lotus or you know, the flower in the mud kind of thing, to see the blessing in the challenge or the light in the darkness. You're going to have to constantly embrace and remember that. And I think it gives us more stories to tell, you know, and more opportunities to shine that light and be that light. And it's really a challenge, I think, sometimes to not adopt a victimhood mindset, which I think are what your tools are going to be great at. You know, how can I probably turn this around to work for me? Tell me what a reader is going to be able to do with those 10 steps, so I'm not just assuming.
Well, and even more than steps, they're tools. Because if you find the one tool that works for you and that helps you shift the mindset a little bit, then that's all you really need. But, the basis of everything, when I would ask my teacher from India, my meditation teacher, what about this? How do I deal with this in life? What about this? And I would ask him all these various questions. And about 98% of the time, the answer was to do your meditation. So really, like at the bottom of this book, I really want to inspire people to do the meditation.
Yes.
To do the work. And that's why I like the way that you work and the way that you teach really resonated deeply with me. It's because like I can't really share what my experience with anyone else. I can just like really embody yoga as true as it is, and the yoga itself is what's great. I'm nothing. The yoga is what's amazing. So when I embody the yoga really well, then God's coming through in the world. Literally, that's what I see. And that's going to light a spiritual fire in everyone around it. And I think as a society, we can really enact some major change. I mean, what if just one influential politician had a spiritual awakening through yoga or meditation or whatever practice it may be? It can have tremendous implications. And it's interesting, but a lot of the students I teach here are very influential leaders in the community. And so just to instill that connection in someone and to keep them grounded means they're going to live your values. And I know that's something you wanted to talk about too, but when people really live and honor their values, then we honor the planet, we honor ourselves, we become a sanctuary for the divine.
Absolutely. I think knowing who you are is one of the biggest gifts you can give to yourself and the rest of the world around you. You won't find yourself betraying and compromising the things that you hold dear to you and that you believe in. So this book, No Mud No Lotus.
Yeah, let me refer back to that last question you asked me. So what will they get the most out of? Like, what will they get out of this book? And for me, it's so interesting how we were just talking about it. So as we're writing something, as we're creating something, or even like, let's say 10 steps like this, or 10 tools to help you transform your suffering into blessing. The universe has been testing me constantly and throwing lots of curveballs my way so that I can use these tools. And these tools have really helped me to traverse through some very, very difficult paths lately that I've had to go through in my life, and be very level and calm and clear and collected. And if I were to have to go through what I've been through 10 years ago, these past 3 months, I would have lost it. So really, the yoga practice itself, like my meditation, has been huge, but I want people to... So the definition that Patanjali gives for yoga in Sanskrit is called Yoga Chitta Vritta Nirodha. And that means yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. So there's all these ups and downs. This person helped me out a lot in my life. Wow, they turned around and backstabbed me. And be so upset at that person and angry, I need to forgive them. Oh, wow, I got a new job, I'm making a lot of money. Oh, no, I have to work overtime, and I have to work every Saturday and Sunday. So everything in life is good and bad, and up and down. But a real spiritual mastery is developing equanimity. It's being able to stop the fluctuations. And really, the fluctuations are only in our own mind. So we stop those by disidentifying with what we're not. I'm not the situation. I'm not the person who helped me and then turned around and backstabbed me. I'm just watching it like a play. But really, this book, it's beautiful because in the end, it really gives people an opportunity to take charge and take action and find some empowerment, because that's the next step. Is once we've dissolved our suffering, how can we now go about changing the world and making it a better place? Like I said before, enlightenment is just the ground level of heaven on earth. So now that we're all waking up and all these indigo children are coming into full age and their full empowerment in this lifetime, I think we're going to have to work. We're going to have to be here. Normally when a person becomes enlightened, they just leave their body and go straight up to heaven, whatever it is, you know? And there's a reason why so many people are being awakened and then staying here on the planet now. And it's because we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of changes to make. So,
yeah, I agree with that. 100%.
So I want to take part in that movement as much as I can. And this book is just another step, I think, on that path for me.
So that answers that kind of leads me into another question. Do you feel like there are going to be more books in the works?
Yeah, and again, you were asking me when it was going to come out. I'm guessing like in the late fall. This one's going to be coming out. But yeah, definitely there will be more books. And I wanted to talk a little bit about spiritual practice too, because I said I do yoga. My mom does knitting. My mom does a little bit of yoga. I'm not going to lie. She's definitely a yogi. But there's a lot of different spiritual practices. So I just made a new commitment that I'm going to write. When I wrote my first and second book, I would write an hour a day for however long. And I'm getting back into that habit. And journaling is great, but also just writing whatever I feel and letting it come out. In this book, in No Mud No Lotus, I had a hard time making an outline for this book that I really liked. And it's because this writing that I'm basically being a vessel to channel this writing, it wants to plan itself out. And it doesn't want me to control it and to say, hey, look, so it's totally opposite of how I learned to write in school or how my mom taught me to write. She was a managing editor at a newspaper. It's totally different how I learned to write, but literally just write from my heart and soul and let it flow. And so for me, it's become a spiritual practice. So I couldn't imagine that there wouldn't be more books coming out, because my whole goal is to make my whole life a spiritual practice. So the more I write, the more I can be in that practice, the deeper I go. So there'll definitely be more books. But that's something you kind of, when we spoke last, I kind of was inspired to take that up, and I realized, wow, some of the stuff that is coming through me in my writing is much better than, that's not me that's coming through. It's too pure. And I don't want to take credit for some of the stuff in this book because it's just so beautiful.
I'm excited to hear that. And that was I was going to ask you if you felt like or if your process of writing is a channeled, if you feel like it's a channeled message, dialogue, or input, kind of insight being given to you to share with the masses, or if you felt like it was your own training or experiences that are being brought to light to share with people. And is it maybe like a combination of the two then?
I think definitely the latter. I think you hit it. Yeah, you know the answer. But if you're gonna tune in and connect to like source through channel, you merge with that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So like you lose yourself in that, and you don't even become that anymore. So it is a channel. But the way that I show up is it's like this divine dance of the cosmos and the ethereal universe. Because like my experiences, my life, the way that I showed up, all the results of my karma and my actions and my thoughts and everything that I've done, and also like a certain persistence to a spiritual path, it creates this beautiful artwork. And so when I mean yoga artist, even more than just a yoga posture, but the art of living life as a yogi. And again, we all make mistakes.
Right.
I made a really bad mistake a couple days ago. I think tell a lie or something like that. Why would I tell a lie? I don't need to tell. So it's interesting, and it was a small little white lie that didn't need to be told. But hey, that's not like what yogis do. And one of my close friends checked me on it, and I really checked myself. And I think it's so important to recognize like nobody's perfect, but this artwork and these beautiful ups and downs and these changes in life. Just to be able to watch that and see the magnificence, the beauty, is incredible. And that's the artwork of yoga. That's yoga art, is like living the life of a yogi.
Living the truth, and also being the change that you wish to see. And I love that God or the divine is putting you in a place to be, kind of to create those ripples in the small pond for other people, other teachers, other light workers. And I'm interested in the fact that you even used the word indigo in your language earlier. I have been in a position quite a few times over the years to end up as a teacher in a classroom with much more experienced, older people around me. And what I'm watching and noticing very strongly, I would say, in the last 10 years is that the teachings, the enlightenment, is often being brought to the older generations in society by the younger crowd, because we have knowledge that you cannot explain any other way than being tapped into sources, infinite knowledge and wisdom, sources, unconditional love. So the paradigms or situations that I'm even showing up in lately is sometimes causing other people to kind of check their mindset about who is the teacher, mentor in the classroom. And I behave in such a way that there's no ego involved. I so much care about the transformation, being the change we wish to see, focusing on the greater good of humanity. I don't get caught up in what human suits we're wearing, and I feel like we all have something to contribute. Now, I'm in Florida, and I spent the last 5 months in England kind of rearranging, dialing in on my business. I'm curious if what I'm describing is something that you have observed or been a part of out in California.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, and I can really I can speak most accurately for my own experience. And I think I started teaching yoga when I was 22, 23 years old. And I don't know very much now. And so back then I knew nothing, I really knew absolutely nothing. And I was getting privates, I think I said, for 3 or 4 years. And my first actual yoga class that I ever attended with more than one student was a class that I taught. So like I had taken privates for I think 3 years. The first actual group class I attended was my own. So it was really interesting, but taking the class, I could almost see like the lines of energy in students and had a very clear understanding of the operation of yoga, but on a more energetic level. And I was totally connected to that. And that was only because I was diving so deep in my own practice. But interesting, I'm 23 years old. Most of the people in my class are nearly twice my age. So it's interesting teaching that. And in a normal yoga class, I'm not having deep conversations like this and diving deep and talking about God or source or spirit. I kind of want to let people connect to that on their own. But for me to have these and then afterwards we talk, and for me to even be in a place to guide people, only being half their age, first of all, like I really honor them and commend that generation to be so humble and open-minded to look at a younger person. You know, and to actually like listen to what I have to say when they have so much more life experience. And I've fallen into the trap before, and many yoga teachers do this in the West, like getting into the ego of teaching and being in the leadership position, or it's easy to get caught in that in any system where somebody's leading a group. But that's when I often most get humbled, because the practice itself is so grounding. But talking about the shift in roles, I have some people who were my teachers and became like family, and became more like friends. I have people who were my students and then also became more closer like family and like friends. And then I've also had people who I always see as my students, but guess who ends up learning the most in that whole transaction is often the teacher. So I'm so grateful, because like, when I'm not working with my teacher Tim directly on a regular basis, I'm learning from my students, and they're my teachers. So I love that. But everything's a symbiotic relationship, and we all charge up. You know, that's something I wanted to ask you. Is you asked me at the end or during our last podcast, sometimes if I've ever gotten drained like energetically because I'm giving so much energy stuff, and it's funny because I went somewhere else. I instantly went to Walmart and what to do at Walmart, because that was my number one problem. But what that does happen. So when I get back from yoga, I'm literally like, I have to lay down on the couch, and I can't even eat for like an hour. Like I have to just zone out and be totally still for an hour. What's your take on that? I know I have a very close friend, and she ended up like, she was teaching a lot, like 3 times a day, and working a full-time job and raising kids. And she ended up like being hospitalized because she was so like had a lot of anxiety, and then also like she had zero energy, zero, and nobody knew why, and could never diagnose it.
Well, I mean, I think it's an individual, like, case-by-case basis to help someone with that assessment of what could be going on. But 2 things that I would like to offer or approach is when we are placed into a classroom position, we're almost like a cell phone tower, right? We carry a certain vibration or frequency, and when we're in classroom mode, we flip that switch on, and we're kind of like buzzing at that vibration, and we share that divine phi with everybody else in the room, and their system tries to match that vibration and frequency. And as you know, if you're dealing with people that are in an emotionally depressed or low state, or a physically challenged state, you're sending out a lot more of your programming, your vibration, your frequency, to help them hit that. We're talking about bliss, their divine bliss, their sweet spot so to me, that's one area of exchange that could be happening. And the other one I was concerned about with you, because you are such a strong empath. That means that you intuitively can sense or take on the physical or emotional feelings of others. And we only have 100% charge when we wake up each morning, like a cell phone battery. And when we are in a space where we're offering so many others part of that battery power, it a lot of times will be carried all the way to depletion in trying to lift somebody up. We can actually transmute a lot of the emotional hurt. Remember, yoga is transformative, and some people might be going through their process by using some of the energy that you bring into the room because they're not able to access or the know-how yet to access their own. So I was curious how much you were shielding and protecting yourself as an empath, because your heart is so big and you care about people and you're like, I love humans, and I do too. I love people. I also love myself very much. And so I have to put kind of like either, in my imagination, some sort of like suit on, like an Iron Man tie kind of suit on when I go out in public, or some sort of like energy bubble, so that I am transmuting my own stuff. This is how people get confused of, am I feeling someone else's hurt or pain or suffering, or is this my own? Because you can actually be very confused about that. And I have seen people who are such strong empaths, they are in a very depressed state, even suicidal, and it's not theirs. It's someone else that they're in the room with. And they just don't know how to separate. All they know is that they're feeling this ick, this sick, this something in their body, and it's not actually theirs. So, there's a couple of things. So, I teach empath empowerment. I've got a workshop going on here in a couple weeks, and I have an online program for it. So, might want to take a look at it if you feel like it's something that you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because you told me about like going in a big store or something like that, a place that doesn't have the highest energy, just to stay in my own field, stay in my own place, and that's just a great way of describing it, and it's kind of helped me to be more aware of that. And I think you're totally right, as we all have an energetic gas tank, and so we can do things to fill that up and recharge it whenever it gets low, and also watch when it gets low. Like if I'm teaching too much, or if my diet is not, like, there's certain things. I think for sure, first we have to definitely have a healthy body. Our physical body has to be healthy and nourished. But yeah, absolutely. So tuning in, and I'll definitely check out that course.
Yeah, it's less than $50, and it is an awesome tutorial. It's all the steps that my spirit guides and guardian angels gave to me, because as soon as I stopped self-medicating and started meditating, all my senses became alive, and I was incredibly uncomfortable. And this was the first thing they wanted me to do. Self-care before service. It was the first thing they wanted to dial in on, and that was, they were my instructors, they were my teachers, and it was always to take care of yourself before you can serve, take care of yourself before you can serve. And so that's and I love to be of service. But if there's no self-care, then there's no there's no service happening. So
it's like, how can we teach someone to care about themselves if we're not caring about our own self?
Yeah, exactly.
And really, as a teacher, I was just thinking about that, like that whole student-teacher relationship. Really, the teacher is seeking. The teacher's on a spiritual journey, just like the student. So the teacher can really just be an example. And then the other people, like, they can't live anybody else's path for them or walk on their journey with them. They can just, for me, I can just do my own path and live that as honest and true and as I can, and hopefully inspire other people in the process.
It's beautiful. So I have a question. Because this was a lesson for me when I went through my dramatic transformation years ago. Do you believe that we have to struggle in order to grow?
Struggling's a choice. Okay. We choose to struggle. And that's a lot about, I've learned so much in the process of writing this book, No Mud, No Lotus. And so much of it is our outlook. So again, we choose to struggle. And the whole point of this No Mud, No Lotus is this shift in mindset to realize what's normally a struggle we could actually enjoy or be excited about going, because I know I've been going through some difficult stuff lately, and I know that's because it's preparing me for this amazing, amazing success and abundance to happen, and that's a beautiful thing. So it's a choice. We can choose to struggle and to suffer. There's definitely going to be work, but I think a great analogy is like going and running a mile. You know, after you finish running, you get this runner's high, you feel amazing, you feel great afterwards, but you have to run. So are you going to hate the run and struggle on the run? To choose to not struggle is to choose to be equanimous. And equanimity is like this incredible thing, because in deep meditation, all like practitioners will see, this is very deep meditation. You'll see the good and the bad things that happen in your life. You see everything, and then you learn not to react to those things and just to sit there, and then we can do a conscious reaction. Right? There's a great technique that I learned in it might have been like a cognitive behavior therapy. There's a great technique that I learned, and basically you would just write down the situation that you're experiencing, right, whatever's happening, and then you write down the first 10 thoughts that come out of your mind. All right, and then you write down those 10 thoughts and you read over them, look at them, and then write down how you feel. And then underneath your different feelings, you may put a couple. Underneath that, then you'll put what you believe, the belief that you create from those feelings. And so what you learn to do is go and look at these thoughts. And you can go and cross out the unhealthy or the negative thoughts and rewrite in a positive thought. And then after they're all positive thoughts, go down and reassess your feelings. And then you end up changing your beliefs about the world by thinking differently. And this is a wonderful practice to use. And I got into it for about a year. I was doing it very deeply, to the point where when I had a thought, I could say, no. That's not real. That's not true. And sometimes when the mind is so persistent, like what if I went on a 5-mile run and it just stopped? My mind is telling me. You get to the point where you can say, no, mind, I'm in charge, and you're going to keep going. So there's an incredible power in learning to use our mind as a muscle. And that's, again, through spiritual practice, through training, just through hard work. So perhaps in the beginning, the struggle is inevitable. Or better say, the struggle is real in the beginning. But I think the whole point is to transform that suffering into a blessing. And it is possible. But it's possible, I think, like a high level of enlightenment, or maybe just getting your first stripe. I don't know. I don't even think I'm at a high level yet. But
so humble.
Maybe the first stripe is realizing that in the moment, that suffering is a blessing. Right? So like while you're in this intense depth, this intense suffering, you know, like when I ended my last relationship and I was like feeling so bad, and I went and I still wanted to be of service, and I met this amazing Kundalini yoga teacher that I was talking about earlier, and I was like suffering so bad in my heart, and she said, "You are glowing right now." She couldn't believe like how much I was glowing at that moment. And I think truly is like our suffering, our struggle is the call of the divine to turn inwards. And we can choose to turn inwards at any moment. And so what happens for me is when I'm going through stuff like that, and I'm a Cancer, which is one of the most emotional signs that there is. My guru from India said, "Oh, Cancer's a stupid sign." He said, "I hate working with you. They're so emotional. They have so many like ridiculous little issues." And but once I learned how to use my emotions to motivate me, I was able to become inspired and really make a bigger difference with those emotions. But I think it's important to work with that and to tune in, because it's possible, like I said, like maybe the first stripe of enlightenment is when we're in that moment of suffering, to choose to say, you know what, I'm not going to struggle, and I choose to not suffer. I want to be equanimous. And then I end up saying, God, I know you're here. Where are you?
Nice.
And usually the easiest way for me to do that is like, what's the method? I said, just tune into my breath and start to focus on my breathing and scanning my body up and down. And so just by tuning in, that's the same Vipassana technique that Buddha taught, this huge thing. You have to go to 10 days. All they teach you to do is scan up and down very slowly and see how you feel, see your sensation. So I think anyone can do that at any moment. So I have a hard time teaching people or charging people to meditate, because everybody can meditate, but I think it's important to obviously sustain the teachers or the people who devote their lives to the practice. So for sure, it's important to charge for meditation, but we all have that innate ability to meditate. So by diving in, that's choosing to not suffer, to not struggle. And yeah, I think for me, it was recognizing that when I would like end a relationship, it would be so crazy because I would open my heart so much to the person, and then the relationship would end. I would be in so much pain and suffering. And I trained myself. I learned that when we're going through that much strife in our heart, something incredible is happening on the astral realms. But it's coming in at such a high frequency or velocity that it's creating such discomfort in our energetic body that it's showing up in our lives through this emotional insanity.
Right.
So the key to that transformation, as ever painful as it may be, is to train ourselves when we feel like that. That's the moment where right now, I don't care what you're doing, pull the car over, sit down, close your eyes, and tune into your breath, start saying the mantra, start doing your practice. Because once we train ourselves in those moments to automatically turn to the meditation, then we totally subvert any suffering that we could have. And I love working with mantras, because in myself, working with mantra or passage meditation, so memorizing a long passage, right? So I memorize that passage and I say it thousands and thousands of times over and over and over again. Well, what ends up happening is like maybe I'll be in the car and I'll start hearing that passage or start hearing that mantra. And then I'll see from a mile away this anxiety or this fear coming. And I'll just keep saying the mantra, keep getting into that place in my prefrontal cortex, that place of concentration or focus. When we get all fear and anxiety and stressed, we get in like our midbrain, or the amygdala is like when we're afraid. So when we start doing this meditation, we get into the prefrontal cortex. And what happens for me is getting so deep in the meditation that it'll when I train myself to do the meditation when the anxiety comes, okay, now what happens is after years of training, now I hear the mantra, and then I see the meditation I see the anxiety a minute or two later. And then the meditation, I'm like, whoa, that's not real. I can see that, and I can feel which part of my brain is operating, and totally transform that to like this spiritual success. So.
It's amazing. I love that you walked us through that. So thank you. I love that you are able to, you're going to transform so many lives, helping them to see the opportunities in the struggles or challenges that are showing up for them. So this is exciting. And then you're going to have another book coming out, hopefully, next year. And I don't know if the numerology for next year is for the artist. So it makes sense that you would be...
The yoga artist.
Well, and writing. Possibly writing again. Another one. I am really curious for you to share. As you mentioned being on house arrest. So I'm really curious for you to share with your audience what life kind of maybe looked like, before. You had mentioned before, like, getting arrested. Do you want to share with your audience what some of those might have been about?
Let me think about it. Yeah, well, I think we're always evolving, and I've been doing yoga for a long time. And looking back at it, it's funny being in my hometown now and like seeing all the people I knew when I was younger, and in the same neighborhood, in the same area when I was younger, and remembering all the crazy stuff that I did when I was younger, and seeing how much I evolved and learned from all the mistakes I made. But when I got sent away when I was 16 to this boarding school, and that's kind of when it all started. And we'll put it that way, it's like at my high school, there's a drug testing policy named after me. Right now, 12 years later, from when I was 16 years old. It's called the Jayson drug testing policy. And they could still drug test athletes at will at my high school because of the legacy that I kind of left there. But it's interesting because like about a month ago, a teacher and the athletic director separately called me and asked me to start doing a yoga program at that same high school. So it's incredible how life just transforms. And I think it all goes back to suffering. I was feeling this great suffering and unhappiness in high school, feeling so stressed out and overwhelmed, and all these emotions that I couldn't process or even deal with. And being an only child, it was different, not having a lot of people as an example for me. So I literally had to go out and learn from my own mistakes. And I did get involved with drugs when I was younger. So that whole thing, it created this intense unrest in me. But really, I believe like that unrest and that feeling, in the beginning, at least it's necessary. Because if everybody was full of love and light, why would anyone want to do a spiritual practice? Why would anyone want to do the work for it? If life was so comfortable, why would we want to change? So a certain level of discomfort is necessary. See, so like pain is optional, but discomfort is necessary in spiritual path. We choose to feel pain, but like it can be discomfort, and we can just watch it, or we can get lost in the pain. But diving into this spiritual practice, it allowed me to really lose myself in the love. So getting into drugs when I was younger, I think it was really a way to connect with people that were my age around me, with friends, but it was also to escape some of the feelings that I wasn't able to process on my own. And so I think societally, I'm excited for the next generation, with so many young spiritual teachers coming through, that we can maybe guide some of the youth in this upcoming generation to do spiritual practice, to dive deep. Like a 10-day Vipassana course that I went to did me much better than 10 years of therapy would do. I can say that without even thinking about it. So I think just from looking at where I grew up and some of the choices that I made with drugs and just losing touch with the values that I was brought up to honor. And those experiences, it really is teaching me that it's important to teach the next generation as young as possible so they can avoid making those mistakes. So they can have a technology or some type of mode to transform their suffering into a blessing. And kids, like you were already saying, kids are already so much more tuned in than someone else. Like I learned, like the mind of a child is sharp like a knife. Like an older person, their life has so much conditioning, it's dull. And so what meditation does for an adult is it really helps them to sharpen the sword of their mind. But children, they come in straight from source, and it's like their mind is already really sharp. Yeah. So if kids just pick up 5-10 minutes of meditation a day, they'll stay sharp and they'll be able to handle this and be able to process these things. For me, drugs was just it was an attempt to process some stuff in the only way that I really knew how. And I resonate with that term, self-medicating. Because, and unfortunately, like the medication that society would give you would be Ritalin, or would give you some type of drug that's why so many people are committing suicide, or so many other things are happening, is because we're not processing our emotions the same way societally. And it probably has to do with so much disconnection from face-to-face and one-on-one conversation, just through screens and media, and everybody watching so much time on YouTube and being on the phone so many times, like in front of screens, instead of spending time with others and also being in nature. That's one of my favorite things about this podcast, is to have an hour-long uninterrupted conversation where phones are turned off. But I love the idea of, people just spending time with people. And it's okay to only have the phone a few hours a day, or only check your phone in the afternoon, or things like that. And definitely spending more time in nature is huge. If I would have spent more time in nature when I was younger, I would have been much, much, much happier. So
you're speaking a lot about a theme, that I'm really passionate about. I think that the recipe for, as in a cure for addiction, or even a preventative measure from addiction is connection to self, connection to source, and connection to others. So you're definitely speaking a language that I understand. The more we embrace those styles of connections, there is no need for an escape, for a numbing, for a mind control or mind altering, drug when you are in that space. So I wanted to ask you, I noticed on some of your description that you're also a motivational speaker. So what do you like to speak to your audiences about?
Well, that was a big one. Suffering, the last time that I spoke, it was about suffering is a blessing. Another thing that I really like to speak about, because it helps me to be there more, is like the fifth dimension and creating heaven on earth. So I have a fifth dimension meditation that I actually did on one of my earlier podcasts, Awakening to the Fifth Dimension. But that's one of my favorite things to talk about. And, when I speak, usually like I'll try to write something down and it just won't come out, and I'll get what I'm supposed to say minutes before. Get that. So really it's not up to me what I like to speak about a lot. But I think really the best way to be a motivational speaker, the best way to motivate others is to find out what motivates you. And so this podcast has been such a blessing for me to have, 35, I think this is the 36th podcast, and meet this many people and spend, this much time in deep conversation and deep thought with this many people. And then find out, and they're so inspired, find out what inspires them and really light our fires together is beautiful. And, one of my other guests, it was just at a conversation when I first met Erez, and he's starting a movement called the Soterian Movement to change the world. He was on the podcast right before yours. Okay. And I asked him, he asked me what I thought inspiration was, and he ended up describing a much more in-depth, beautiful concept than I had thought of. He was talking about how motivation comes from below. It comes from the earth up. And inspiration comes from the heavens down to us. So really, to motivate people, I think is best just to share my experiences and to share what motivated me. And for me, it's all about daily practice. Just do my practice the most I can. Do what I love the most. Follow my excitement, things like that. And to share what motivates me and keeps me going. And then when I'm in that place and I'm talking to somebody about how suffering is a blessing, but how I'm truly sincere in my experiences in life, and I'm truly grateful for the most difficult things I've been through, and that I know even if I'm going through something hard right now, it's a good thing, and I'm truly sincere and like, okay, it's something amazing's about to happen, and can even be patient and calm and not suffer as I'm going through this experience. So just to really be there, and that's the best way to motivate, is just to connect with Source. You want to inspire somebody, connect to Source and let them see that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I am curious, because you've been doing this podcast for so long, I'm sure that there's been questions that your audience has approached you and asked you. Is there anything that you want to address during this podcast that seems to come up in your conversations with your audience? You want to share?
I think the one thing that I want everyone to do, not any questions so much, but just if I could give guidance, because everyone that I talk to, what they think and what it's all about, again, as I already said earlier in this podcast, is the beauty of what we're doing is we're starting a conversation. And if like 1,000 people listen to this podcast and each one of them has 2 conversations about it, that's how many thousands of conversations by that point that I'll get sparked from this one match. So if I could give anyone listening, other than just tell you to do your practice every day, practice and all is coming, as Patabi Joyce used to say. If I could give anyone any other advice, is to like really start to make your life your practice, and do that by having these conscious conversations. If there's something that we speak about or something that I said that sparks some curiosity in anyone who's listening, talk about that. Talk about that with me when you see me at yoga class, or talk about that amongst your family or your friends or you're beloved. Talk about that with anyone. And I want this world to be a world of deep divers, you know, and that's what I'm doing. And so, yeah, let's dive deep together. And I think together we can go much deeper and make a much greater impact.
I love that. And I have noticed that even in my dialogue with clients that I'm coaching and in the classrooms that I'm hosting, that I am really encouraging clients and students to utilize a practice that allows them to feel their emotions, to process the situations that are coming up for them. This, to me, this daily practice serves no one if it's your escape from reality, if it pulls you away from what's going on. I feel that our spiritual practice is working best when we can transform, elevate, you know, the vibration or frequency of a situation that's going on, even becoming neutral, observant, and detached from it. I find myself kind of like in nod mode when I need to kind of like pull away from a thing to kind of see what is actually going on. But I'm not running from it. I'm just changing my perspective about it. Sometimes I have to stop myself from even wanting to judge it good or bad. Just get real neutral, just to kind of, you know, embrace or just to view as an observer what is going on here. And if I want more of it, then I, you know, take a direction that says yes. If I'm not as excited about what it is and would like to have less of it, then I dial up whatever it is I need to do to kind of charter a new course or direction. But I sense that there's a lot less drama with it. And for a long time when I was a meditation instructor and teaching this practice, communication with your guardian angels and spirit guides, it almost seemed like a venture, an exploration that I would take them on that would almost take them away from their problems, you know, a de-stressor. And I think that our goal as good instructors is to kind of loop them back around to, you know, that observer role, so the practice is a practice that serves them in the long run.
Yeah, like we shouldn't look at like as spiritual teachers, they shouldn't like open restaurants. They should teach people how to cook. You know, it's because like I've had that a lot. Is like I've seen that a lot recently, and in some yoga teachers that I know, is really wanting to help somebody feel super calm and relaxed and at peace, and really wanting them to do that. And that's great. Like, but really, I don't want to manipulate anyone's emotions or feelings into whatever than what is. I want them to experience and to accept and love what is. So that's enlightenment. Enlightenment is loving what is. So I don't want to make somebody feel relaxed. I don't want to make somebody feel calm. I don't want to put on a song that brings up all these emotions during their meditation or no. I want them to feel what is real. And you said there's beyond good or bad. Like Rumi said, there's a place beyond right or wrong, and I'll meet you there. And so that, I mean, that's equanimity. Equanimity is equal-mindedness. And these things will happen, but you have to get real to heal. You have to get with the pain, whatever emotions, whatever, even the good ones, like whatever the emotions that we're going through. It's important just to sit with that and not to use the practice to get away from it. Because normally, you know, like sometimes I'll sit in the car on a long drive and just sit there in silence and just feel what I'm feeling. Because I think we so have the tendency, even amazing thing like chiropractor. Some people go to the chiropractor and it's like taking a pill. They just want their back pop, they feel better instantly and go back to living a sedentary lifestyle. I think it's really important to, you know, keep doing the work and keep looking. And so when these things come up, that's when I see the most change in people, when people are really able to break through these barriers and to get past their triggers, is once the stuff comes up. And even if it's something that just an anxiety attack out of nowhere, it's just to sit down and breathe right into it. And usually for me, like there's a physical place. So I might even ask my body, where is it that I'm holding this tension? And instantly I'll go right there to the heart. And then, okay, after I sat with that, where is it now? And go maybe to my throat. Where is it now? To my stomach. And sit with that place and just sit with it and not react at all. And so that's a good technique anyone at home listening can use. But yeah, the real trick is when these things happen is to sit with them, and they actually end up charging you up. And instantly you'll transform that suffering into a blessing.
Exactly. I find myself a lot when working with clients, a lot of people want to disassociate or take the pain away from something, numbing with alcohol or even pain relievers, whether it's physical or emotional pain. They want to, push it away, make it stop. And part of my work, especially with divine healing, is to pull them back around to pain is always a message. Let's just open the envelope and see what it says. We don't have to hide from this proverbial mailbox. Like, let's just see what it is and deal with it. Because, what you resist persists, and the pain will turn into, a chronic situation, whatever emotional or physical it might be. So I'm so excited about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. I like that. The pain is like an envelope. I love that concept. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Telling you. And I can help someone kind of transform that by taking them through a meditative process and state, so we can see what is showing up.
It's funny because I'm so conscious of language, and one of the things I talk about a lot in Fifth Dimension is there's a Fifth Dimension language. So you heard me say earlier, like, do people have to experience suffering, or do they have to go through struggle? And I said it's a choice. So instead of like, oh, I have to do this. No. I choose to do this task. I must do this, or I need to. No, like, I choose to. There's a much more empowered way of speaking when somebody is awakened and is on this higher vibration. And it's funny because we've been talking so much about pain and suffering, and I want to shift that and just talk about bliss, because really, this whole teaching, this whole beautiful place, what this is to be in this bliss and ecstasy, divine love with just pure source, and that's the place where we're all going to. So may everyone know who's going through a dark night of the soul, there's always a sunrise too, to every sunset. So it's just bliss and beauty, and a few times in my life when I've slipped into the deepest bliss, it has been just in looking at a sunset, and it had been from this moment of intense pain, unhappiness, and just that sunset and being with nature. Whoa, like, literally took me out of my body. I had to fight to stay in it. So bliss is there, and it's real. We all can tune into that. And it takes guts. So that's something that I didn't mention earlier. Is like when these emotional fluctuations happen, it takes guts to sit there and look at them right in the eyes, to look at your pain right in the eyes. And when we do, we usually see like, wow, it's coming from some shame or some fear. It's coming from some underlying cause that really, there's a beautiful teaching in yoga. They're called the kleshas, or the afflictions of the mind. And there's 5 afflictions of the mind in yoga that we talk about. So the first one is ignorance, and the second one is ego, and the third is attachment. So that turns to addiction. And the fourth is aversion. And a lot of times addiction happens because people have an aversion to feeling. And the fifth is fear. So our fear is usually, it all boils down to a fear of death at the end of the day. Like a fear of not having enough money, not being able to buy food, have shelter, not being able to support myself in life. So all fear basically boils down to the fear of death. So Patanjali gives us these 5 afflictions, and they all come from the very first one, ignorance. Because if we knew the truth about who we really were, and we were honest with that, then all those afflictions would disappear. So Patanjali gives us the methods of Kriya Yoga, and he gives us 3 steps in Kriya Yoga to overcome those 5 mental afflictions of the mind. The first one is tapas, and tapas refers to fire. And so that fire is what's made from a daily spiritual practice, like from an intense sadhana. So this intense practice, you create a fire that burns off the impurities. And you could say physical, but you also could say mental impurities or spiritual ailments, but it's all connected. So the second method of Kriya Yoga is called Svadhyaya, and Svadhyaya is introspection, so looking in. And it could be reading a book, it could be listening to your friends and teachers and thinking about it. But my favorite way to describe it, especially in the context of a spiritual practice, is I do the practice. So it may be meditation, it may be channeling, it may be yoga, it may be knitting. You do your practice, whatever it may be. And most of these spiritual practices all focus on the breath. So when we all start focusing on the breath, the first thing that starts happening is our mind, after 4 or 5 breaths, may turn away. And we have some thought or some feeling. And we have to look at that and we have to deal with it. So the practice, like this fiery practice that we're doing, is really a container or a vessel for us to look at our mind in introspection. And the final method of Kriya Yoga is Ishvara Pranidhana, and that's surrender to God, surrender to the divine, or you could say surrender to source, whatever makes, or you could just say straight surrender. So do everything and let it all go. And so, it's funny, but it's analogous, now that I'm thinking about it and how it's 3 steps like that, it's analogous to the prayer that's always said in AA, the serenity prayer.
I love that.
Because we have to do the work, so give me the courage to do my practice.
Yeah.
And looking at my thoughts, give me the ability to change my thoughts if I can, and let me go of what I can't, and be wise enough to know the difference, or just to surrender at the end of the day. And for me, really, the ultimate is when I surrender, and when there is pain, and when I surrender to that fear, the aversion of feeling it, and just breathe into that place, it doesn't hang around for much more than a few seconds after I surrender to the fear of feeling it and the experience of just going through it. And I know this stuff is working because I've been going through some intense stuff in my life lately, and like I said, wow, I'm pretty impressed with the way that I've been handling it and the level-headedness. And more than anything is maintaining my values and who I am and my sense of self, and even knowing when something's not in alignment with my values, and being able to follow the signals and go in a different direction. And if I can do it, anybody else can do it. So
I get that. I really do. So I have one last question.
Okay.
It's the one that you ask everyone else. What do you do to stay inspired?
I knew you were going to ask that question. I knew I should think about it and write it down too. But what do I do? Lately, something that's been helping a lot is I've been just thinking of my teacher, Tim, because I left San Diego a lot. I left San Diego recently, and I haven't been back and seen him for a few months. And, just thinking of Tim. Tim's a real guru. They say a guru has like a darshan or shaktipat. So their shaktipat is this divine energy that flows through their top chakras down through their feet. And it's in India, it's called pranam, where you would lay down and kiss the guru's feet.
Wow.
There's a beautiful prayer that says, I take the dust from the lotus feet and I cleanse the mirror of my heart. I take the dust from the lotus feet of the guru and cleanse the mirror of my heart. And, thinking of Tim and everything that he's gone through, Tim just embodies pure love and compassion and piousness and saintliness and service. When I think of love, I think of Tim. So when I'm struggling, like I just think of him and I know he's there. I know he's there. Thinking of Tim, something he said, as a teacher, my goal is to inspire a love for the practice. The practice itself done consistently and accurately is the real teacher. So if I really want to honor Tim and learn from Tim, is to do my practice. And every time I do my practice, I feel better than when I started. Every day is definitely different. Some days may be better than others, but more importantly, consistently. And so I'd like to recite this poem that we have, that Yogananda wrote. And he said, "Think ye in thy heart of the lotus feet of thy guru. If you want to cross the ocean of delusion, shaming the white lotus in purity." And it says, "In the image of Brahma. This is my guru, deliver me from delusion." And my favorite line in that is, "Shaming the white lotus in purity." Whoa, what does that mean? That didn't make any sense to me. Like, why would shame would even be in this? And I looked into it, and I asked one of the monks at the SRF, and they said the guru, the teacher, is so pure, is such an embodiment of source, that it would even shame the lotus flower in purity.
Wow.
So to be the guru, really, turn back to No Mud No Lotus, to get to be that pure, there must be some really good soil, some really grimy fertilizer, some really difficult times that taught that individual flicker of source how to connect to its essence and embody the truth. So yeah, long story short, I think of Tim, I think of the guru. I say the word guru, and just go deeper.
Well, thank you so much for bringing that divine masterpiece to, manifestation and fruition for all of us. And thank you for your time today. I have to tell you that when I think of Jayson Barniski, I think of compassion, forgiveness, and dedication. So whenever I wish I had a little bit more of those and embodied more of that, you're the one I think of for those things.
I'm honored. I'm humbled. I'm humbled by you saying that, but I'm honored. So thank you so much for your time. I look forward to collaborating more in the future. Anytime you have a project, we're still going to have to talk about crystals and numerology. Maybe next time we could easily talk an hour about that.
And maybe a workshop in California. Who knows?
We could do it at that Desert Tower anytime. They would love to have you there. So we'll talk about that more in the future. Where can everybody knows my website, JaysonBarniski.com, or you could find me on the podcast, Spiritually Inspired, which you're already listening to. But where can people find you, more about your courses, and just get in touch with you?
The good stuff about me is on TideTheSpiritMessenger.com, and the Spiritual Academy is messengersofspirit.com. So between the two, you'll find the good stuff in me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Ty, for being here. And thank everyone for listening. We'll talk to you soon.